Torrey Smith, if only y'all knew how awkward some of the male reporters act. Straight meat watchers. I'm not going to lie. It is a little weird that people are in there, but I don't mind. I never minded it.
You never minded?
Listen, somebody wants... My is low on the totem pole. I'm not impressing anybody or doing anything. Don't think this is the problem that it's being made out to be.
It's so funny, though.
I really honestly think guys just don't want to be interviewed in the locker room. And a lot of people are crying wolf right now to just try and get the reporters out the locker room. It's so easy to just not show your to everybody. Put a towel on or go into the bathroom that they aren't in. Like they're not in the showers like, hey, how'd you catch that ball?
Commenting on privacy in the locker room, I suppose. The NFL Players Association issuing a statement saying that maybe they would like to get the media out of the locker room because, well, they're shy and they feel like they don't want to be looked at as pieces of meat. Let me read the statement here real quickly. Over the past 3 years, the NFLPA has tried to work with the NFL and Pro Football Writers of America to move media interviews out of locker rooms. However, there has been little willingness to collaborate on a new solution. Players feel that locker room interviews invade their privacy and are uncomfortable. This isn't about limiting media access, but about respecting players' privacy and dignity. The NFL's current media policy is outdated, and we, the NFLPA Executive Committee, urge the NFL to make immediate changes to foster a more respectful and safer workplace environment for all players. And Torrey Smith, former NFL wide receiver, Baltimore Raven, says, if only y'all knew how awkward some of the male reporters act, straight meat watchers. So there's the context for Jason Kelce's comments. Dave, you have covered the game and you have spent your fair amount of time in locker rooms. What of the meat watching? Is this a real phenomenon? Is it a problem? Are players right to air concerns? Or is what Jason Kelce said more correct, that they just don't want the media in the locker room and this is a convenient excuse to accomplish that?
I think it's the latter, Ricky. I think ever since COVID, they've been looking to get us out of the locker rooms as much as they can, because the stories that get written, certainly after a game or maybe after a practice, when there's no cooling off period for the players, you get that natural reaction. That's what we're trying to get, certainly after a game. I mean, I've been in a million locker rooms and, back in the Redskins days, or even going back to the Washington Bullets days and the Wizards days with Michael Jordan. You're trying to get access right after the game when it's raw, when it's fresh. I remember LeVar Arrington shutting down an interview because he didn't like, somebody had said, they really shoved the ball down your throats. And he went, up, that's it. Interview canceled. And you've got 50 reporters around him at a scrum while people are getting dressed. And, he just shut it down because he didn't like the question, because he's mad because they lost. I think it's more to the latter. Look, I just wish that the term straight meat watcher was not introduced now to the public lexicon. But I think that's where we are now, right? Now, I never heard that term in 20 plus years of locker rooms. I don't know if we're going to give Torrey Smith the credit for that, or we're going to give the Kelce brothers credit for that. But here we are. Now we got straight meat watchers. And to pin that on media writ large, I think is really a convenient way of saying, we don't want you creepos here in the locker. We don't want to be interviewing you when you're naked either, right? So Kelce's right. Throw on a damn towel. It's not that difficult, okay? And back to Jordan very quickly, Ricky. He was Jordan was Jordan, right? Everybody else, I remember I get Juwan Howard, Chris Webber, you name it, and those guys, shirts off, towels on, talk to you. I got to put that mic up because, they're 6'11", whatever. Jordan waited until everybody else was done and he was fully dressed in a suit, and then came out and did his interview with us, the scrum media that's there. So he never even put himself in the situation that Torrey Smith or the Kelce brothers are referring to. So you can do that as a player. You can just say, you know what? Guys, and some players would do that. They'd sit down, they have time, they'd say, hey, let me get dressed. And you respect that. And you go, cool. Other guys wanted to talk right then and there. Some guys did not have a towel on. Back in those days, we had female reporters in the locker room and anchors, and the rule was always eyes up, just eyes up, okay? As long as you do eyes up, you got no problems. And if they're trying to, some guys would try to make it difficult for some of the female reporters. They wanted to make it awkward. Sam Weiss did this infamously back in the 80s, right? So they tried their tricks to then blame the media for straight meat watching. I don't know that that was ever really a thing. I think it's another clever way to try to get media out of the locker room.
I mean, what's the most awkward shit that you've witnessed? You know, because I mean, you must have seen players do weird things, and I'm sure at least somewhere along the way you've seen some media person do something weird too. So inquiring minds want to know, Dave.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, I don't want to give out specific players, but there were players back in the Redskins days that were notorious. Shall we say, maybe they screenshotted watching film and they were naked and they let that get out. I'm not going to refer to the player, but everybody in DC knows who I'm talking about. They would do some of these things to expose themselves, and they would kind of do this to get a, no pun intended, rise out of the media. So they played their roles too, okay, to try to be almost like old Howard Stern shock jocks, but as athletes. And I think it was their way of saying, you know, if you guys are going to be here, men and women, you're going to be in here, then I'm going to be me. And if me is naked me and I'm gallivanting around the locker room, you got to then deal with it. What are you going to do? So I always felt like that was a little bit of really showmanship is probably the perfect word for it, to try to make people uncomfortable. And look, I'm not going to take the bait. And I think most of us in DC media did not take the bait, but there were athletes that would do that. And I think they did that on purpose. And I always thought that was kind of uncool because you did have a lot of professional women in those locker rooms just trying to do their job. And I think sometimes the athletes would try to make them uncomfortable for no reason other than they can. And it was their way of saying, you guys shouldn't be in here.
So what do you think will happen here? Do you think that there will be a change? Will the NFL move on this? Do you think? Yeah.
Players will win. They'll cry wolf and say, it's those guys in here and women making it uncomfortable for us, the poor athlete. So you guys got to kowtow to us. Look, if you want to do, and they did. I remember they switched the rule where I think it was like, we had to wait 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes after a game before we could immediately get in those locker rooms. And that's fine. Like if that's what they want to do, that should be ample time to take a shower and put clothes on. But that was kind of the unwritten rule for us in media was you could see who's still coming out of the shower and who's already at their locker clothed. And that's the people we'd go speak to. It never felt like an issue. I do think this is somewhat manufactured now. And if Torrey Smith wants, maybe their locker rooms are different in Baltimore. I can't speak to those. But in DC, I don't really remember it being an issue for the media. Maybe some of the players wanted, again, to try to be a little bit outlandish, see if you could get, a reaction out of some people. And I don't know that anybody really took the bait in my 20 plus years in DC media. Never really saw it to be a real issue that is now being out. I think it's more of a boogeyman hoax here to try to blame media for something else so they don't have to talk to us until they really want to talk to us.
Yeah, that's kind of rough being accused of being a pecker checker,
Right.
And I assume
that's,
that,
we're not there for
that's not, that's not really, but you got a few people allegedly ruining it for true professionals such as yourself, Dave.